When it comes to provision, God is our provider, and God is generous, and he wants us to be a reflection of him, to be generous. And we've got to see that provision is not just money. Most teaching is all based on how do we get enough money, or how do we get more money. So the thing of, okay, well, I'm going to give an offering, I'm going to sow an offering so that then I can receive a multiple of that offering back. I think that's, in principle, I'm not in a sense in any way saying sowing and reaping isn't something which is within the fabric of the kingdom. I think it is. But I think it has been turned by faith teachers and sort of prosperity teachers into a formula which really takes the relational out of it, and then becomes something I'm doing to get something. And I don't believe that's really how God intends us to operate independently of him. I see he's my provider. If he shows me to do something to release provision, then that'll be great. If he's just providing through whatever source he's doing it that comes to me, and for me, that might be, I got a salary, so that is a provision. I see that coming from God, even though it's coming through the company, it's God who's directing it that way to me. So it's the source. I could see, well, it's a purely natural source, or I could see, well, God is just using that natural source to bless me. If then people bless me or send me offerings or something, well, I see that as a source of God's blessing. But I don't solicit that, because I'm not looking for people to be my provider. God's my provider. And if he chooses to use people to bless me, that's great. But I'm not going to determine which way he chooses to bless me and then make it a formula that I am then in control of. And I know people say, well, if you don't sow, you won't reap. But only give what the Father is asking you to give, and give cheerfully. Some people are sowing just because they feel under duty or obligation to give, or they tithe because they've been told they need to tithe, otherwise the offerings don't work. And that becomes a system which is old covenant, we're not needing to be involved in. Yes, there is a treasury room in heaven that's connected to a process of our maturing, in which we can draw from the resources of heaven to enable us to fulfill our destiny. But it isn't about money. And I think people who teach, oh, well, I've got to go into the treasury room and I've got to trade on Melchizedek's trading floor and I've got to give this offering, and then they just make it so complicated and protocol driven. If the Father asks you to do that, fine. But I don't do it because it's not something the Father's ever led me to do. But God provides. And I truly know that God is my provider, and that I have more than enough for all my needs and an abundance for every good deed that he asks me to at work. That is a state of mind and consciousness I live in. It's not something that I have to go and try and activate by some sort of faith step or by some formulaic way of getting money to myself. And I think I just would be very careful that you don't go down the faith route, the prosperity route, or even mystics who are telling you you've got to go and trade everything to Melchizedek. I know people got so bound up when they were told, well, everything that you receive, you've got to go and trade it. Every revelation you get from heaven, go and trade it for more. And they were just getting so confused. It's like, God hasn't given me a revelation that I've then got to go and trade that revelation. If he wants me to have more revelation, I will get more revelation because he's freely giving me revelation. So I found that all these protocols just made it complicated for people and made it almost formulaic, and now people will tell them, oh, well, I've got to go and trade that revelation. I've got to go and give it to Melchizedek because otherwise I won't get more. And they're just in so much bondage to all these things where it's so simple. I trust in God's provision. He loves me. He wants to bless me with everything I need. If he's asking me to do something, then he will provide for me to do it. And if he's not provided for me to do it, I'm not going to do it. I was talking to someone the other day and they were saying, oh, well, I serve God and I go all over the world, and he sends me to this country and he sends me to that country and he sends me to this country and he sends me to do this and he sends me to do that. Um, but I feel that, basically I haven't got time to do a job, so I'm trusting in him. So where's your provision coming from? Well, Social Security payments. Okay, so you're not really trusting God then. Well, he's using that payment. Okay, that's fine. So when he sends you to somewhere, do you go when he provides you the money, or do you get into debt and then go thinking you're doing that in faith? Then he'll bail you out later. Well, yeah, that's how it's going. So, and actually, I'm in debt. Well, that's not how God does things. That's us trying to figure out a way that we can do things that we think is serving God. But God doesn't want us to get into debt and be using credit cards that we can't pay back and then having all our credit cards maxed out because we thought he said to go to Africa and do something and there was no money to do it. But we thought, well, he said so, so I just better go in faith. That's not faith. If God is asking you to do something, he will provide for you to do it. And if you haven't got the money to do it, I wouldn't do it. Unless he totally specifically said, yes, do this and I will do this. But people just make presumptions and assumptions on finances, which get them into all sorts of trouble, either operating out of a religious system. And if you're in a church-based system, they will be trying to get you to tithe and offer, and they'll try and get you to give their money so that then God will bless you because you're blessing them, all this sort of stuff. And there's sort of all the offering messages and pressure. Don't give out of compulsion, Paul said. Give cheerfully, don't give out of compulsion. So ask God what to give and give it. Simple. It's quite simple. He'll show you what he wants you to do if you ask him, so ask him and then just do what he shows you what to do, and be careful you just don't get caught up in man-made ideas about money. And so much about the trading stuff just got people off into buying revelation. I saw so much chaos around all this trading. You got to trade into this and trade into this revelation. And then you'll get this revelation because you're trading into it, because you're showing how valuable it is to you. And what you're doing is giving people money for the revelation, which I'm no issue with people charging for material and things they make. And why not? They've made it, they can charge for it. That's no problem. But then sort of all the pressure on then trading above all that into revelation. If you paid to go to a conference, then you pay to go for the conference. Everything that you receive in that conference is because you paid to go there. You don't need to pay on top of that to trade into people. If you've asked God, well, do you want me to bless? And God wants you to bless and give a gift. Awesome, give it. But don't feel under pressure or compulsion in any way when it comes to finances, because that's just not trusting in God's provision. That's being fleeced. People really, and there's a lot of people out there after your money, and I would be careful that you don't feel pressured to give anything. Hi everyone, we're starting a Patreon page, patreon.com/freedomarc, and we would like to invite you to partner with us in taking the message of God's unconditional love, limitless grace, triumphant mercy to a bigger global audience.